Already, this is going to be part 3 for this 2015 Kia Optima, and I start recording right away because I was working on some other cars, and I had this car running for 15-20 minutes, and I ran out there, and I shut it off, and it wouldn't shut off, so got about an hour of footage here. It's pretty cool what we find. So I came out to, I had the car running for like 20-30 minutes, because I've been working on some other cars, so I pulled one out of the bay. I turned the key off, and the car's still running. We never saw this in part 1 or 2, but it was definitely a customer complaint. It is 100% running. I'm going to check that fuse we talked about in part 2 real quick. So I got my meter to battery ground, and I'm checking this fuse up there for the cluster. 13 volts, 14 volts, alternator battery voltage, alternator voltage. Do the other side, same thing. Which, if you remember, that was cluster 10 amps. So I got battery alternator voltage on this one right now with the key out of the ignition. God, it almost acts like an ignition switch, but they've already done that a couple of times. We don't care about the memory because that's going to have 12 volts on either side, or voltage on either side all the time because it's hotted all the time. Well, I checked it anyways. I got voltage on both sides, which is expected because because it's always hot. This one should not have nothing with the switch off. I want to scan it real quick. Not that we're going to get any data, but just in case. I don't really want to disturb anything while it's doing this. I want to check some stuff now that it's doing it. See if I can help give me a clue to figure out why it's doing this. I sat it out in the sun. It's been the warmest day in Idaho for a long time. It's like, God, I don't know, 55, 60 degrees, no wind. Sitting on the sun here, been running. Maybe 62 degrees it says on the dash there. Maybe it's something heat related. Are we doing a full system scan now? Sorry about the glare. I cleared all the codes last time. Airbag, we already had a sensor issue before. Alright, sorry about this glare. Cluster has a CAN module error. Thought I cleared this before, but maybe not. Let me see if it revs up. Revs up like normal. The radio don't turn on. Nor does the HVAC. The heating, ventilation, air conditioning doesn't turn on. I put it in reverse and it just died. That's interesting. I remember them saying that too, but now I got to see it. Okay, I did it again. I started it and I turned it off and I pulled the key out. I put it in gear, reverse, it dies. It says goodbye. Very interesting. We start it again. Comes back alive. We turn it off. Keys out. This is some good data we're getting. We just got to find the problem. But we have, let's fault scan it again here. We have no radio, no HVAC, heating, air conditioning controls. That light flash was because I was scanning the module. I turn the wheel. Of course, it's going to lock because the key's out. Let me just put the key back in. I can't even turn the key now. No, I could. It was the steering lock, sorry. Turn it off. Still running. Put the key in. Key on, engine off. Then the HVAC comes alive, and so is the radio.
Boise's best.
HVAC comes alive, radio comes alive because I got the key in the run position. We turn it off. Out. Radio turns off, HVAC turns off. Won't even come on. Except the engine's still running. Why is it doing that? No other issues. I'll clear that can air from the cluster. Why is the ECM alive, keeping the engine running? Let's see if the windows work. Driver works, but not the passenger. I can roll the backs down, but I can't go up. Passenger right front doesn't work. Driver's goes up and down. The right rear passenger will go down, but not up. You turn the key on again. No, I can't get the windows to go up. The back ones. And the front one won't work. The front right, the driver's does. Hopefully, I don't know if they didn't work before. If that's part of this problem, we'll have to find out. If they can't get them up, we'll have to park it inside. Just turn it off. Still runs. No codes that time. We'll scan it again. I can rev it. Drive it like normal. So weird. Again, our HVAC and radio is off because the key's out. So we know that switched input is nothing with this problem with it staying running. We'll have to get back into schematics again and see what the heck is going on. Look, no codes at all. Before we had codes. Let's turn it on. HVAC radio comes on. Let's turn it off. Radio goes off. Engine stays running. Let's turn it on. Can't get the windows to go up. Now let's scan it with it on. With everything on. It's finished scanning. There's not going to be any codes. No codes again. Let me go ahead and turn it off. Radio, HVAC turned off. Engine still running. You open the door. Let me pull that fuse for the cluster and see what happens. Why it's still running. Alright, it's still running. Pull this cluster fuse. Sorry, with my camera all over the place. I'm all over the place. I pulled the cluster fuse. That didn't change anything. Still running. Turn it on. Stuff comes alive. Turn it off. Pull out. Let's put it in gear, then it dies. Put it back in park. Everything is dead. Start it, turn it off, and it still runs. I'm going down a different direction now. Well, kind of the same direction, but like we said in part 2, the bus messages and stuff is a symptom of the problem. We got to find this problem, what it's doing and why. So we can get back into schematics and take a look. Still running with the key. I'm just going to tap on these relays. Not that it would do anything. See something sticking. Nothing. God, it almost acts like it's that switch. Nothing. I'm gonna go ahead and key's still out. I'm gonna go ahead and tap on this ignition switch panel. See if anything changes. Nothing. It's still running with the key out. I went way up under the dash and I found this thing. It looks aftermarket. I thought I looked up under here before, but I must have missed that because it was tucked way up under here. Kind of hard to see. But it doesn't look factory. I'm going to try to unplug it. And see if it keeps running or not. Maybe it's not aftermarket because that looks this is Optima QF USA. And if you look, that's wire loomed in there the same way. Like, maybe it is factory. We'll see here. The zip ties don't look factory though. Well, I thought this was like the remote receiver, but the remote still works. I unplugged it, started it, turned it off. It still runs with this out of there. So this does look factory. The more I look at it, kind of looked aftermarket at first, but it's unplugged there. It's just so hard to tell with that. The loom looks factory, except those zip ties really don't. But I'll do a full system scan now and see what we get from there. All right, scan. I put the key back in. It scanned. The reason I went down this road is because I was up there looking, wiggling wires and seeing if anything would change. And I looked at this. I'm like, well, this don't look factory, but it's not affecting what we're having right now. So, and it's wired in actually really nice under there. I'm gonna put it all back under there and zip tie it all the way, so it's all good again. But you've got to eliminate things one at a time to see why this thing is still running with the key off. We're gonna have to get back into schematics. But with that unplugged, no codes except for left turn signal circuit open, right turn signal lamp open. Maybe that's what's going on. Flash fast blink. Left blink works. Nothing in the front. Already put that module back in. Still got a fast blink on the left and the right. Well, this thing here, it's got a button you can push and it lights up. Kind of interesting to see what that is. But no left blinker still. Yeah, so that module had nothing to do with these blinkers. At least eliminated that. There's just light codes in there. Or blinker codes, I mean. So again, turn it off. Stays running. When you use the fob, it won't do nothing. Put in reverse, or try to get in gear, nothing. Says goodbye. Now the fob works. Start it in neutral. Turn it off. Turn it off. I can't pull the key out, so we put it in park. Put it in park, well, because it went through reverse. Start it again, turn it off, stays running. Let me get back into schematics. So I'm in the schematics here and I'm looking at the ignition switch. For this thing to stay running, there's your on from there, and then there's your on for there. So if you go down to here without smart key, because we don't have smart key from part 2 of this video, if you go in here, the circuit and the ignition switch is powering ignition 1, PDM, MPD, MDPS, airbag, cluster, airbag, electronic parking brake, module 2, module 3, and module 4, whatever those are. As well as the other side of the circuit on without smart key is wiper, air conditioning module. So if we try the wipers with air conditioning didn't work, we know it's not this side of the circuit. Let's try the wiper to make sure that doesn't work. Or works. Let's see which one it is. All right, I'm back in the car. Keys out. It's been running for like 20 minutes. I have to do some other stuff. With the key out. So the wiper is not working. That strobing in the back is just my camera refresh rate. It's not even, the wiper's not working. So we know it's not that part of the ignition switch. Let's go to the other circuit. All right, so back to this. So this part of the ignition switch right here, without smart key, if that leg of the circuit was on, powered up, wipers would work and the air conditioner would work, and it's not. So, and this may not even be an ignition switch issue, which I would think it would be because they've replaced it a few times. However, let's go down to this circuit here without smart key. And, well, we know we have voltage here on the cluster because we checked that earlier in this video. Let's look at these other fuses and see if we got voltage on those as well. One of those in there was ignition 125 amp, and I'm checking that one, and we got voltage. There's one side voltage. Come on, I can't see. There's the other side voltage. I'm gonna check a couple more, which we don't need to, but I'm just to prove it. Actually, I don't need to check anymore because it's on the same feed circuit. But I pulled that 25 amp fuse. And the cluster went off. But the car's still running. That's the ignition circuit. The car's still running. I thought it died, but it did not. I pulled that 25 amp fuse and it's just a cluster went off. That's the ignition circuit. Popped the fuse back in and then the car just died. So I restarted it. I pulled the key out and it's running. Let's pull some other fuses on that same circuit. Another one, which will go back to the diagram to show you, just trust me for now. Module 2 10 amp, we're going to pull that one. Well, first we're going to read it. See if we got voltage. Should imagine we would. Yep. 12.8 volts. Other side, 12.9 volts. Let's pull that one and see. Says goodbye, but it's still running. I can hear the car still running. I can hear it. Now let's just pull, instead of checking, let's just pull module 3 and 4 10 amps under the There. See what it does. Sorry, my camera is all over the place. Nothing, still running. Let's do 4, that was 3. Nothing, still running. What the heck? This is eliminating our ignition switch. Which would make sense, kind of. Let's get back to the schematics. All right, so back to the schematics here. If you look, this circuit here, without smart key, I pulled this ignition one, 25 amp, cluster one dead, but it still ran. I didn't do the PDM or the MDPS or the airbag. I did the cluster, I did the module 2, module 3, and module 4, and it still ran. The cluster didn't turn off with those, obviously. So if this killed it, it would be like, okay, well, an ignition switch. But now we got to check. I think a good idea would be to go to our PCM and check our powers to that and see where that comes from, which I'd imagine it's from one of these fuses, perhaps. We'll take a look next. All right, so I went out there and I verified this side of the switch here when it goes to on, which it's off, but if it was stuck on, you would have power here. And I verified a couple of these fuses, and we didn't have power on module 5 or 6, which makes sense. We don't, and we're down to the circuit still. So let's look at the PCM power next. So PCM power, right here, there's 2 powers. This is power distribution. Comes through this connector. Comes from the fuse box, ER fuse box under the hood. TCU1 20 amp. We can pull that fuse and see if we die, but let's see where it comes from. Where does this thing come from? Let's go back. So I went back. It's from A. So go to this. Oh man, I went back. All right, so A right here. Make sure we're on the right one. 110-2. Right there. A comes in to power the PCM up. Go back. Okay, that's hot at all times, it looks like. That is hot at all times. So that's probably not going to help us. Well, let's take a look at it anyways. Just to at least eliminate that. TC1. Alright, sorry about the glare out here. But TC1, number 2, said, we showed a 10 amp, I thought. Let's just pull it. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. They have a 15 amp in there. Let's just see. Still runs. Not that. I plug it back in, it changes tone. But it didn't kill it. Still running. So, ECU 3 over. Let's do this one. Killed it right there. Okay. That third one over killed it, which is ECU. Let's try it again here. Go ahead and start it. Put the fuse back in. Shut it off. Still running. At least we know what fuse is going to kill this now. I'm just looking at the fuse box, see if there's anything else. Well, there's this 30 amp one. I'll have to get a different fuse puller for that. There's this ECU relay. That kills it, obviously. Maybe that relay's sticking. It's another TCU1. I want it to keep acting up while we do this. Turn it back off, key out, still running. Just good for troubleshooting, right? So we know the ECU fuse 3 and the relay ECU kills it. TCU 20 amp, nothing, still runs. Just seeing if there's anything ECU. That one kills it too, 4 ECU. Start it again. We got 2 fuses and 1 relay that'll turn it off. So far. Started it, key off, still running. And we have to get into schematics to narrow this part down, obviously. This one killed it. This one killed it. This relay killed it. Obviously, ignition coil will kill it. If I pull this fuse, I imagine it would kill it. Let's get back into schematics. Alright, so now what I'm doing is at this other schematic, PCM, 3 powers going in there, comes up from the engine control relay in the EMS fuse box, which we were just at. We pulled that relay out. Well, that relay obviously killed it because it powers the ECM and it powers these ignition coils. And then EC1 30 amp, I don't think we pulled that one, that's a bigger one, is the control side, and then the load side is the PCM. Maybe that relay's sticking. Let's put a different relay in there and go from there and try that. Alright, so I went ahead and pulled every one of these fuses, which I have power on these, but I shouldn't have any power on these because it's, you know, off. But I do have power on them. I pulled every one of these fuses and it does not kill the engine. It still runs. That's why I kind of went down the road with the fuses for the relay, and the PCM fuses and relay. So what we need to do now is basically get to the power side of the PCM like we were doing a little bit ago and seeing if we're getting power on one side and the other side we shouldn't be, and if we are, and just kind of isolate it down that way. So what I'm going to do now is we're getting, obviously, well, I haven't checked it, but I imagine we're getting power here to the PCM and these coils. Obviously we're getting power to the coils because it runs, and we're in a power distribution schematic. And if you go back up here, if you pull this ignition coil, it's going to die. If you pull this relay, it's going to die. This ignition coil fuse is going to die. Engine control relay is going to die. Well, this was only latch over when the PCM grounds it, unless it's sticking in the relay. And then you got to have power coming through here. Let's check EC1 30 amp, see if you got power on both sides with the fuse out. And maybe ECU 3, I don't think it's going to help us. The fuel pump would loop back around. So yeah, let's check ECU1 30 amp fuse. ECU1 30 amp fuse, obviously if I pull it, it does die. Let me check on both sides of this leg now. So I got power on one side, and the other side I don't. So that is not the answer there. We're eliminating that at least. All right, so that fuse looks like it's going to be hot at all times. So that's not going to help us. So if I go back to schematic, comes from I, go up, go over here to A. there's A, it jumps around from battery positive. So that is going to be hot at all times. So that is not going to help us. Just got to find another direction. All right, so I pulled that relay out, keys off, engine's off. Got voltage there, and I got no voltage on the other ones. So two of the terminals have voltage on, pin 30 and 85, which is expected. Control side and load side. Voltage coming in. Again, the keys off, the car's off. There's a cluster still on though. But anyways, before I go there, I put this relay in. You can hear it clicking. It's latching. You can hear stuff on the engine too, making some noise, some solenoids or ignition coils. But it should not be latching with the key off. I can't lock it now or unlock it. But this may be our clue here. This thing is 100% latching. Now it's latched. Of course, it'll probably start now. Well, it's going to start because I put it back in. Question is, will it turn off? All right, so I had to clear some codes to get it to run again. Yep. So, got it running, let's turn it off. Now it's turning off. Really? Of course, now it's turning off. Oh my gosh. Now it's turning off every time. Now it's not acting up. How convenient. So now, anyways, this will work on our favor. Keys off, engine's off. Pull the relay. Look, not latching. No latching going on. No noise in the engine. So there is our clue. That relay is latching, but why? All the windows do go up if you go to the, actually use the window switch. Maybe it's got a, well, the other one did. The other rear, left rear did. That one's not. This one is. See how it's cracked down there? It'll roll up with this switch here. Anyways, let's go look and see on that relay again. Alrighty, I'm gonna have to wrap up here soon. This will be obviously part 3 and more to come, I'm sure. But anyways, this relay, we unplugged it, plugged it in, it was latching, which means this is latching over, giving up power down, because this is hot up here all times. It's giving power down, it's going to the fuel pump, our injectors, fuel, whatever else is on that circuit, ignition coils, and a bunch of other stuff. So let's go to N. It's going to get power to N on this schematic, which is N, sensor 2, sensor 1, sensor 3, and fuse box under the hood. So your oil control valve, oxygen sensor, camshaft, all your, well, critical engine functions. So that answers that question. Going back, why is this relay latching? What is pulling this over? Well, if this is hot at all times, right? That's hot at all times, coming here, sitting there, coming over. This has, it's not a sticky relay. Why is this thing latching over? When it does latch over, we know it powers up. All that stuff, coils and everything. But more importantly, the control side is what's latching it. What's controlling it? Well, the PCM is controlling it, which is right here. The PCM is controlling that. It grounds it. The PCM grounds this relay. Oh, come on. PCM grounds this relay, and then it'll run. Or if it's not, in our case, it's not always unground the relay. When you turn off, so it stays running, but nothing else functions as far as HVAC, AC, and stuff. So we eliminate the ignition switch. Now, why is the computer can tell the ground to stay down? Is it because we got bad power or ground to the PCM? Or is there a wire chafing? But we need to monitor this wire here. Connector 100 or 200, if you look into that pin 53 white wire, which is probably pretty easy to get to because it's right under the engine bay. We need to monitor this, why it's grounding that. But the only way the computer can ground it is if the computer's alive. So then you got, over here you got a power, which is hot at all times. So we look in the schematics some more. Or, another scenario is, maybe the computer's not grounding it, but something in this EMS fuse box, whether we've been messing with the relays and fuses, under the hood, not the passenger compartment, under the hood, maybe this wire is rubbing and shorting to something, and if that shorts the ground, it's not going to shut off. So we're getting narrower and narrower under troubleshooting. We're getting closer. We know this is an issue, this relay. Not the relay itself, why it's grounding it. Whether the PCM is purposely grounding it, we're going this direction. I don't know what direction that actually is, but I guess it's to the left. No point intended. But going that direction, if the PCM grounded, we got to backtrack through the PCM powers and grounds, or we're going to the other direction, to the right, I guess. No point intended. Where the wire's shorting under the fuse box in there. So that'll be our next step. And look, I let it run for another 10 minutes while I was filming that last part. I have the key out right now, and it's still running. So like I said, we need to monitor that PCM wire. So I was trying to smell something. Thought I smelled something like electrical, but maybe not. I don't know if you can smell that in the video. Probably not. It'd be pretty cool if you could. But like I said, we gotta, is the PCM telling to ground it? Or do we got an issue under the fuse box? All right, key on, engine running, turn it off, still running. That ground wire, which is the white wire I just talked about, I opened the loom up. I'm gonna solder this back together when I'm done. Nice shrink tube wrap, would be nice. I'm gonna basically simulate it. Damn kids. Unhooking the wire, and it dies. So in that case, if it stayed running, remember our key's off. If it stayed running, then this wire here is shorted in this harness or in this fuse box. But it's not. So it tells me that the computer is grounding it. And I can hear the relay click when I do that and fill it. So it's, yeah, put my phone down. It's definitely clicking when I unhook it and hook it up. The computer's grounding it. Why is the computer grounding it? Is there a loose ground to the computer or wiring, power and grounds to the computer? We can eliminate that. Or is the little MOSFET transistor that's inside this computer grounding it and not unlatching? Because so inside of this can be like a little transistor. I don't know what kind of transistor. If it's a MOSFET transistor, if that's grounding it, then that wire will be grounded, which will ground this. Because remember, there is power going to that computer. There's hot power at all times, and then there's a ignition switch and all that stuff. So that's where we're at with this. So I started it, turned the key off, pulled it out, still on. Have my leads hooked back up, so obviously it's running. Dies, because it's unlatching that relay. Well, what's latching in here is the computer is grounding it. Another proof is I'm taking my power probe to that relay wire, the control side. I'm using a power probe and I'm just grounding it. If I let go, the car dies because it ungrounds it. But the computer is always grounding it. As you can hear it doing that. That is the question. Why the computer's grounding it, when it should not be, when the key is off. Alrighty, we got some good data. I was on the phone for the last 20, 30 minutes talking to Zach McLean, our lead automotive solutions in Arkansas. And he's got a good point. So, I can't remember where I left off on this filming. We got stuff going on everywhere. But either way, the key's off, right? However, we got power down here when the key's off and we shouldn't. We eliminated the ignition switch. And another way we just eliminated is I pulled this ignition one out here. I pulled it out, clutcher goes off, obviously because there's no power. I pulled this fuse right here, and then I have no voltage on any of these. And if the key was on, or the switch is bad, I would have power on these. So we know it's not the switch. But I'm getting power backfed down this circuit somehow, right? So where does this come from? This is the smart junction box under the passenger compartment. I go back up from L. We're getting power backfed. So L comes down here. Come on, phone. Gives it power to TCU2, ECU4, and ESC3. We don't care about this leg of the wire because that's for manual transmission. This is an automatic. Well, earlier I was saying we got two issues. It's computer prom transistor, which I don't think it is in this case now. It's more of a, we got a wire shorted backfeeding. When this PCM pink wire here gets power, when this gets power down here, that's an input, the computer will ground that relay. We should not have power on this wire going down. So I checked. We don't have power on this side when I pull the fuse out, but I have power on this side when I pull the fuse out, when the key's off. Well, if I have power on this side, I go back. I'm like, oh, it's the ignition switch. But it's not, because we eliminated that and we pulled that ignition 1 fuse out. So that tells us there is a short in this wiring between the fuse relay box or under the dash. I'm going after the ER fuse relay box under the hood because I swear I smell something electrical under the hood once in a while. I'll get a whiff of it. I don't know if you can smell that in the video or not, but I can smell it. So like I said, I'm not getting power on this side. If I give this power with a power probe with the fuse out, PCM will latch that relay. It's doing its job. But there should not be going power through here. And the power comes up from here, but I already pulled this fuse out, so it can't come from the ignition switch, which is up here without smart key. And that's exactly what we got going on. So we've got a shorted wire chafing once in a while. Maybe worse when it gets hot. So now, I guess I could pull out TCU2, TCU ECS3, see if I got power on both sides right now while it's acting up, to kind of determine if it's below the splice point or above the splice point. All right, so I pulled TCU2, and I had power on this side, which I shouldn't have. And I pulled ECS3, and then I did have power, and then I went back, and I don't have power here. So now it's not getting power. So it's after the splice. It is something in this fuse box. So it's in this fuse box. There's 1, 2, 3. ECU1, TCU2, ECS3. This is the power side. I'm just touching down there. And I have no power. No power, no power. If I go to the computer side, PCM side, give it power, you can hear the relay latch. Because I got those together. If I unhook this and I latch it, it won't latch because the ground is disconnected. So the computer is good, ignition switch is good. Give this power, you can hear it latch and it would run. But I have no power over here now until I turn the key on. Let me try that. I gotta put that ignition one fuse back in, and it's only gonna have power when I crank it. Or I mean, key on, running or cranking. I got power there. On the side. If I turn the switch off, it goes away, which is good. If I turn the key on, obviously if I have key on, engine cranking or running, I'll have power, which is 12 volts. But when I have the key off, it goes away. Remember, see, it went away. Remember, we had power there with the ignition one switch out, which is not the ignition switch. We are down to this box, this fuse box, ER box, whatever you call it. We got something going on in here that's causing a problem, and I could smell something burning, or a slight, maybe not burning, but like electrical smell. Hardy, I need to wrap this video up, but we pulled the ECU4 fuse, it dies, right? We pull the ESC3 fuse, it dies as well. There's something shorting, and that's with the key off. Obviously with the key on it would die too, but with the key off, it'll die. We got a shorting here somewhere, a short in this fuse box, in these legs. I got it running, keys out. If I pull this, there's the ECM, or ECU, then TCU and ESC. If I pull the middle one, the TCU, nothing. If I pull the ESC, it'll die. Keys off. I shouldn't have any power. And I have no power there. That's weird. I just had power earlier, I thought. So now, let me start it again. Started, and it's running. StabiliTrak ECS light is on, which you saw in other parts of this video series. That was that fuse we just pulled. Let's pull this one. Keys out. We should have no power on that back. But we do, look. There's power on the back, 12.4 volts. We shouldn't have any power back there because the key's off. If I plug it back in, it's going to energize that relay. Let's check the center one, the TCU one. 12 volts. I pull this one, the ECS one, ESC I mean, no voltage, no voltage. So as soon as I pull the ESC one, the voltage goes away. Let's put it back in. And then I got voltage again. If I pull the ESC fuse, if I have the ESC fuse and I got voltage here and I shouldn't, if I pull this ESC fuse, then I have no voltage right there. So now I'm back to the drawing board yet again. I'm like, well, we gotta have a short in here. Not necessarily. Now we're down to these options. A short in here, or this ECS thing is powering up when it shouldn't be. Backfeeding on this circuit here. But this wire is backfeeding here from the ESC module, powering up, backfeeding on this wire somewhere. Then it's going to backfeed through this, power up this 12 volts, power up this 12 volts when it shouldn't, power up the other stuff 12 volts. So again, not trying to repeat myself, but we either have wiring issue shorting in here in the relay box, or the test we just did, pull this fuse, voltage when we shouldn't have it. Pull this fuse, voltage when we shouldn't have it. Pull this fuse, no voltage, it goes away. But then again, it can't be that wire, because if I pull, or this module wire, because if I pull this fuse and I don't have voltage on either side, then it's not from this module nor this wire. So it must be back into, we got a short inside of this. I already disregard some of that last statement. I got 3 fuses out. ECU, TCU, and ESC. Nothing on ECU either side. Nothing on TCU either side. Then I'm going to go to our suspect, ESC. 0 volts on the one side, 12 volts on the other side. 0 on one side. Well, if there's 12 over here, and I put a fuse in, it's going to jump from here to there. It's going to jump from here to there and here to there, because it's all spliced in underneath. So we're getting voltage right here. With the key off, engine off, there is our suspect. We should not have any voltage on that right there. But we are, and that's what we need to look at in the schematics next. All right, so when I pulled the TCU, the ECU, no voltage, no voltage, no voltage, no voltage. And then no voltage, but we have voltage. We have voltage coming from this wire, because I'm checking voltage, let me think here, on this side. Yeah, this side is switch voltage, switch voltage, switch voltage, the top sides. The bottom side is when it goes through. We'll look at that again. So we should have switch voltage, and down here we shouldn't have any voltage, but we are getting voltage down here on this leg, whether it still could be shorted inside this box, I guess. It absolutely could be shorted inside this box, fuse box under the hood, or this wire, or this module bad. But now we know we're narrowing it down, like from big to smaller to smaller, smaller, smaller. We're narrowing it down from overall car down to all this. Yeah, so this side is switch voltage. This side over here, all this side is switch voltage. This side is when power goes out. But there's no, should not be no power here, and we are. That's how it's back feeding, because it's shorted inside here, the wire or the module itself. I got everything back together except that ESC fuse. Again, there'll be power on this side, but there should not be power on this side. There would be if the fuse was there, but we got power back feeding through. This is exactly what Zach McLean told me to look for. There's a fuse back feeding, or power on both sides. Let me turn it off. It should absolutely turn off now, because that fuse is out. Every time. Running. Turn it off. Running. Turn it off. Now let's put that fuse back in. That's back feeding power. I heard it click on. It should not be back feeding any power. Now I'll turn it on. I'll turn it off. Stays on. All right, so we can 100% confirm we should only have power here with ignition switch. We have power and nothing on this side until the switch is turned on. With everything off, switch off, we have power on this side. You should not. And that's power coming through, and it's back feeding and going up through all these circuits, and that's why the car is not shutting off and coming alive sometimes. So either A, we got an issue inside the fuse box, shorting and getting power to this wire. B, wire outside the fuse box, or C, module itself. So we can unplug the module, and if it goes away, then we know it's the module that's causing this. That's what I want to do next. So E003 ESC module, left rear of engine room, it's like by the brake booster, ESC module. I think that's your ABS module. Let's unplug that. So it was running, I had the key pulled out. Everything's hooked up. ESC fuse is in. but the key's pulled out. I went ahead and pulled that ESC connector right there. You can see it's kind of snapped in, and then the engine died. Which it should die because the key's off. Now let's go ahead and start it with that thing off. Starts. Shuts off. So remember now, all these fuses are plugged in. The only thing I have unplugged is that ESC module, which you have power back feeding through there. I turn the car off, turns off every time. Turn it off, turns off. Let me plug the ESC module back in. All right, so it's hard to get that connector back on, but what I found here, I don't know if you're gonna see it or not or hear it. I'm moving this harness, it clicks. I'm moving it up, clicks. Engine stuff, relays. Not in the connector, but the harness. We got an issue with the harness going to the ESC module. Go ahead and start it. Okay, I'm telling you when to turn it off. So we got it running. I'm gonna hold the harness, move it, turn it off, start it. I'm gonna hold it down, turn it off, start it, start it. You got to move your steering wheel when you start it because it's locked. Turn it off. Is it off? So it's off right now. She's got the key out. My assistant has the key out. I move the harness up pretty good. I'm gonna let go, and then it shuts off. So it's down in that harness on that ESC, which looks like an ABS controller, but it's in that harness down there. I can't really see it, but it's getting dark out. I need to pull that harness apart and look for the short inside that harness. It's getting dark out, but it's definitely shorted in that harness. And if you look down here, I don't know if I can capture it. Come on, come in. It's shorted down there. Let me see if you get a better view. Alright, it's not the best picture here, but if you look, it's shorted. Looks like something chewed through there, a mouse. I opened the insulation up. Those are wires there. I'm trying to use my finger. I can't do that. Those are wires down there that are shorted to each other. Power and wires. Something chewed through there. It's a bunch of wires that are shorted to each other. That is 100% the problem. All right, so that'll be the end of this video. Part 3, that'll be the final. Who would have thought the ESC ABS module, shorted wires were backfeeding through the entire circuit, causing this issue? It all makes sense now. The customer complaint was the dash would come on randomly. Sometimes it wouldn't shut off, which we saw today. Sometimes it would go for 6 months, a month, a week, a day. It would come on, go off. It just depends. It acted up. Well, going back through all these circuits you saw, was a mouse that looks like it chewed through these wires, and you couldn't see with the naked eye. It was under that harness a little bit, kind of hard to get to, and shorted it. But going through all the circuitry and the diagrams and looking at it, we had voltage where we shouldn't have had voltage. I could see how we thought it was a, ignition switch, but it wasn't, because we had voltage backfeeding. Very unique situation from some mouse that was, I would imagine, a rabbit or something that was chewing through there. We just need to put up on the lift, open that loom up, fix those wires, and this car will be good to go. Again, I want to say thanks to Zach McLean from Elite Automotive Solutions in Arkansas. I talk to him quite a bit, actually almost every day, a couple times a day, and he always keeps me on my track with stuff. Sometimes I might be going down a different road. He gets me back on it. He'll get on his computer, remote in, give me some ideas. Guy's awesome. So he's helped me out significantly, especially with this car, well, and several other ones. But it was a pretty cool find. Finally found it, which is it all makes sense through this long video series. So, like I said, we're just going to put it on the lift, fix those wires up, and this thing will be good to go. So that is it for this video.